Good morning and welcome to the September 22nd, 2025 Finance Committee meeting for the Lee Summit School District. We'll begin with item 1.01, contracts $15,000 and less. There are a number of items on this list. As you can see, it's a rather lengthy list, and probably how I would categorize the items on this list are beginning of the year purchases, but also additional purchases based on identified need after the year has begun. And so, as every year begins, we have plans. We know the resources and services that we need, but there are times that we, begin the school year, then we learn of some additional needs. Student moves in who has additional needs, and we'll make purchases based on that. Are there any questions related to the items that are on this list?
Nope.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item 1.02, contracts greater than 15,000. Once again, this list, a number of items on this list will be items that we discuss in today's meeting. Are there any questions, though, about any items that are on this list?
Not till we get to that part.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, moving to item 1.03, ACT testing. Dr. Barger and Dr. Lindquist.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this is on there. We offer the ACT to juniors, our 11th grade students, at no charge. We estimate 1,200 out of the 1,550 juniors will take that assessment. And this is a authorized expense of up to $70,000 for the spring semester after we receive that invoice and get an exact number of students who have participated.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Lindquist. Are there any questions?
None here. Thanks.
This is a great service that we provide our students.
Thank you.
1.04, Drs. Jones and Dr. Barger.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
This is for our nuclear ability test. This is the test screener we use throughout the school year for gifted identification. It's a universal screener we give to all first and third graders in the spring, and we'll then also use it for any referrals or additional screening that might be necessary for advocacy kids as a part of our appeals process in the fall. Consists of 3 tests, nonverbal, verbal, and quantitative, which give us 2 different measures that we use as part of the 4 criteria to be identified by the state as a gifted student.
All right. Are there any questions?
None here. Thanks.
All right. All right. Thank you, Dr. Jones. Moving on to 1.05, insurance plan for the calendar year 2026. Drs. Herzog and Mrs. McMillan.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to take this item, and then Sarah McMillan, our benefits coordinator, is also on this call, and we can both answer any questions if there are any. This is the time of year we need to renew or actually set our rates for our insurance plans for the calendar year of 2026. So our insurance plan does not run concurrently with our fiscal year. So we start that in January. And so here in the next month or so, we'll begin our open enrollment process for all of our current active employees, as well as our retirees, to be able to sign up for insurance coverage. This part of the process is setting those rates so that we can communicate that out to all of our participants. So some highlights for you of this for this year. First of all, we're going to continue with Blue Cross and Blue Shield as our insurance plan carrier. That's the recommendation. They won the RFP last year, and that RFP is set to go every 3 years. So Blue Cross will continue as our coverage provider. Plan design changes. So we offer 4 different plans, and there are no There are no plans to change those for this year. We'll offer the same plans as we have in the past. Funding, there is a change in funding. So we are self-funded for insurance purposes. And so our funding goes to pay our claims. Well, working with CBIZ, they've indicated that we should plan on seeing about a 10%, a little over 10%, 10.66% increase overall in our claims for this upcoming year. So we have planned for that in the budget for the remainder of this year. If you remember, I mentioned before, this does not run with our fiscal year. So for the second half of FY26, we've planned for this increased expense, and then we'll plan for FY27 for this expense, plus the potential for an increase on the second half of that for the insurance plan for 2027. Of that increase, the district is planning and has budgeted for funding 80% of that increase. So that's about 2.3, a little under $2.3 million the district will fund for that increase. The remaining, about 725,000, our employees will see through some increased costs that they would have for certain plans. We still do offer a plan. Our Blue Select Plus plan for employees only is completely free. There's a plan an employee can choose that has no cost to them at all. Their other plans do have a cost associated with them. Another change for this year that really won't impact employees, but it will impact our funding, is our stop loss coverage. So we need, as a self-insured organization, we need to have a point in which we incur no more losses. And so in the past, Blue Cross Blue Shield has provided that service for us at a cost. Their renewal cost was about a 45% increase over this year. So we did go out to bid on that, but we had CBIZ go out and talk with other providers about what they could do. We had one provider, Symetra, who came back with a lower cost with some differences in the plan, but overall lower cost to our district of about a little under $300,000, about $280,000 less. So we are changing our stop loss provider to Symetra, which again will not cause any issue for our employees or members. It will be mostly on the administrative side. Additionally, so that is an individual stop loss of $250,000. So any claims over that $250,000 point, we would not cover. The stop loss coverage would kick in, and they would take over there, and they would reimburse us for those costs. The other piece is if we go over 125% of our expected claims, then that stop loss coverage also kicks in at that point too. So overall, it is an increase to our budget, which we are planning for, but less than it would have been if we would have stayed with Blue Cross. The final piece that I think is most notable is that we are going to continue to fund HSAs for our employees on our high deductible plans at the same level as we did during this previous insurance year. So we're going to fund that at $182 per employee per month for Blue Select Plus, and then we're going to fund that at $142 at the next level for our other high deductible plan. So overall, those are the biggest updates for this. It is going to be an overall increase to our budget, which we have planned for. Any questions on our insurance renewal?
Yeah, I've got a couple just clarification questions. So you mentioned that the Blue Cross agreement was approved last year. So that was by, I don't remember if it was since I was elected or it was before I was elected, but the plan at the price it was at was approved, and I'm assuming the contract allowed for Blue Cross to increase the price a certain amount, and so it went up to the 10.66% increase. Is that correct?
It's a good question. Remember, we are self-funded, so we're paying our claims. So Blue Cross does work with CBIZ to report what they believe claims will look like in terms of costs for each year. We did not agree on a set price necessarily because we're paying our claims when we did the RFP last year, and it was prior to you coming on the board. I believe it was in the fall of last year. So there is a potential each year for increase based on what claims look like they're going to cost. I will say, though, that we are about 7 months into our self-funding process. We have relatively good data, but we don't have even a full year of data on our self-funding. Right now, it looks like we are doing very well in terms of our fund balance in the insurance fund and our overall costs, meaning that we started the year, and I don't have the exact number right, really close, but close to $7 million in reserve. And at this point, even paying out the run out claims from our previous plan from last year, we are running very close to that same fund balance right now. There are still 5 months left in this plan year, which means
Mhm.
we could see increased claim costs over the next 5 months. So we'll monitor that closely, but it is looking good right now in terms of self-funding. So
Mhm.
overall, I would say the plan is doing exactly as it should be at this point, in terms of what
Mhm.
it's costing us. 10% is steep of an increase, and we recognize
Mhm.
that. Going up almost $3 million in costs from one year to the next, long term is not a sustainable model necessarily. It is sustainable, but it's just going to cost money. It's good. We have
Mhm.
to put funds there, to be able to take care of it, and that is a big cost.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's what I was wondering about. And you mentioned when you were describing this that there was an increase baked into the budget. Does it cover the full 10.66%, or are we gonna, I mean,
Yeah,
what
great
you had
question.
predicted when you did the budget?
Well, I didn't create the budget, so I get to
Oh.
blame Mr. Holder still, for anything that goes wrong, with the budget. But no, I have looked at it, and
Uh-huh.
ultimately, most of that cost is built in. There
Mhm.
is there is a little bit. We didn't anticipate this big of an increase, so there is a bit of additional cost that we are going to have to essentially use our fund balance for, but that's why it's there.
Mhm.
And a big part of that too is that we continue to fund the HSAs at the same level with this increased cost, but that is a benefit to our employees that we would like to continue to do.
Mhm.
Us being able to do that's important. So yes, we did build it in. But as I also mentioned, that budget's only for half of the plan year. So even if we didn't build in quite enough, we can look to build in a little bit extra on the second half of that during FY27.
Yeah, Michelle, I was going to add to that too. So it goes January to December, so it's only half our budget.
Yeah.
What Nathan put in was a 5% increase. This is a 5.3% for the first or last 6 months of our contract or our
Mhm.
fiscal year. So it's
Mhm.
pretty darn close to what we budgeted. And
Mhm.
the national average is 11% increase. So it's a
Mhm.
slightly better than what we're hearing. The national average is. Insurance it gets more and more expensive. It's the price of doing business.
Yep, yep, it does. All right. I have one last just clarifying question. I noticed that the wording for the Thursday board meeting items for consent, the approval includes like dental, vision, all that stuff. Is that just a formality because it said here that those were already bid and they're already locked in? So
Uh,
we're just approving the whole thing on Thursday?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mention those. There is no change at all in those, other plans. We did bid those
Mhm.
previously. They're not set to go back out to bid until
Mhm.
2027.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, for plan year 27. So we would actually go out to bid on those next year,
Mhm.
to look at potential other options. But those are the same as
Mhm.
this year, and that is all part of
Mhm.
this one package.
Okay, so it's considered one full package even though they're all set, right? So we as a board on Thursday are just approving the whole thing because, right?
That's right.
Or as a formality. Okay, okay. Thanks for answering all my questions. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Board Member Dawson, this is a 3-year contract that we have with Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And so this is year one of that. Next year will be year two. So then the plan year 27 will be year three, and then we'll go out to bid during that year to determine who our provider will be after that.
Thanks.
Mhm. All right. Thank you, Dr. Herzog. Moving on to section 2, facilities. Mr. Grell.
Good morning. Got 4 items this morning. I would like to present the first two together as they're related. For Broadway Ford, we are recommending the purchase of 2 trucks, and then the American equipment is for the plows, salt spreaders, and light kits to outfit those trucks. The facilities department has about 40, we have 47 trucks in our fleet, and about half of them support our snow crews. So these 2 trucks will be kind of replacing a couple of our workhorses. They are large, they're 1.5 ton F550 trucks. One has a dump bed, one has a fifth wheel for gooseneck trailers. And we are excited to get these guys replaced. Through the pandemic, it was really difficult to get the bigger, more specialized equipment. So they are being purchased off of the Missouri State contract from Broadway Ford. And the facilities department does have capital budget that will support these expenses. So be glad to answer any questions.
Yeah, the only question I had was about since they're replacements for other vehicles, older vehicles, will we then see those once the new ones come in and everything, will we see those old ones like on the assets list? Like, are you gonna, I don't know, sell them off somewhere else, or like what happens to them on the in the financials?
Yeah, great question. They get surplused. Sorry, I have a mower going outside my window. Um, they will get surplused, so you will see them probably in the next couple of months on a board agenda as surplus equipment, and then they will be sold on gov deals.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Mhm. Right. The next item 2.03, is a roofing contract with Flynn Midwest. And we bid, this is a kind of a carryover from last year. We had bid a series of projects last year and did not have good bid response. So we're really trying to get out ahead of things for next summer's work. So we had three roofs that we want to replace next summer. One is at Great Beginnings Legacy Park, Summit Lakes Middle School, and also Lee Summit Elementary. And so the Summit Lakes and Lee Summit Elementary are projects that are in design right now and will be bid here in the next month. But Paradise Park, we had existing design drawings from last year that we had bid and not received responses. So we went ahead and just got that out, got it bid, and actually received a lower bid number than an estimate that we had from last year on the job. So we're really excited that this early bid has saved us some money. So Flynn has done a lot of work for the district. They're a very high level contractor, and we are excited to award the contract with them. Know they'll do a good job for us. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. Oh, and I should add too, so this is funded through the maintenance repair budget and the bond issue. As you're aware, we have the funding set aside in the bond to support our 5-year capital plan. And so it would be funded through the bond issue.
Thank you.
All right, so the final item on the agenda, 2.04, is a contract with Win O. Jones. They are the distributor for TMI casework. Casework is the, classroom storage cabinets. And so we had a flood in the basement of Underwood Elementary School last winter. Casework was all damaged in the basement. We bid it in the spring and did not receive any responses. We bid it again this summer and we only received one response. And so we do feel good about the number. We've run through some estimating and feel like it's very fair for the work that's being proposed. We did go ahead and issue a purchase order for this in advance, just so that we're really trying to get this casework in. It's primarily the art room. The art teacher at Underwood has been dealing with temporary storage for a long time now. And we'd really like to get it installed over Christmas break. And to make that happen, needed to get a purchase order entered. So there is another item on here that we had talked about at Mason Elementary. Mason Elementary, as you know, is it's not a full elementary, but they're always kind of walking the line on their capacity. And we have a classroom there that could be outfitted with some casework to just make it more ready to handle a regular K-5 section. So we've got some casework coming that will give them a little bit of flexibility with their space. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I just just one, I guess, clarifying question. So when this type of scenario comes up where you got no bids and then you only got one bid, does the district have additional procedures that you have to follow for documentation in that case? Because you said, the prices look reasonable, you needed to get a purchase order in place and all that stuff. Is there additional documentation that you have to do on your end to like meet any requirements? Because normally you would want more than one bid, right?
Yeah, there are not required documents that we have. We do verify. We go back and look at our other cost estimates that have been provided on our recent projects, just to compare the numbers, lineal foot cost, unit cost for wardrobes, upper and lower cabinets. So this in particular, if it was a more complex project, we would go through maybe a little more involved process, but this is a pretty simple, just kind of buying individual cabinets that we were comfortable with the comparisons we had with our other recent bids.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Mhm.
All right, thank you, Mr. McGurl. Moving on to section 3, finance, Dr. Herzog.
Okay, well, there are 3 items today on the finance portion of the agenda. First one is our transfer of funds. So if you recall, last month we did not have a transfer from Fund 1 into Fund 2. This month we have a minimal transfer, $219,290.32. This will be the last month that we see a number of that nature for this transfer. That number will move back into the millions moving forward as we get all of our payroll for the school year coming in September. Any questions on that fund transfer?
No, thanks.
Okay. Treasurer's report. So I'm going to start with the revenue and expense report for the month of August, ending on August 31st. So we'll start at the top left, as we usually do, with our revenue portion. So I'll start with the positive here on the revenue portion. If you look at those numbers, the combined Fund 1 and Fund 2 percent, you'll notice that those are very, very close to last year. We're just a little bit about 0.04% higher than last year. I do like to point out, as I have so far each month, that seems to be very, very good. However, it's a little bit misleading because we have received some additional revenue from federal funds to start this fiscal year. There is a reason why we're not a little bit further ahead. I just want to point that out now. It's not something to be concerned about at this point in the school year, but I just want to point it out. We're running about $1.3 million behind in state funding for Proposition C, for Prop C. That is it comes in as a local revenue source for us, even though the state does control that. We do put all that in Fund 2. So you'll notice our Fund 2 is running behind, and that is a good reason why. I mean, a big reason why it's running behind is Prop C. We can't do anything about that. There's nothing we can do when Prop C comes in a little bit lower, and it always does lag a little bit to begin the fiscal year. The state will start to fund that at a higher rate as we move through the year. I have just noted by looking at their appropriation from the state for Prop C, and then also what they're using as their denominator for that, which is statewide ADA from last year. I believe they've underestimated a little bit on the ADA side. And so I don't think we're going to see the funding at the level that they anticipated for this year, even though I do think it's going to increase throughout the year. So we could be at a point where, this end of the year, May, June, we are looking at a little bit less in revenue there in Prop C from the state. But I think it'll be a lot less than the 1.3 million we're behind right now. That's the big reason why we're behind in our revenue sources there in Fund 2. Moving across, though, everything else is running as expected. Debt service, we shouldn't see much revenue at this point in that particular fund. Same with capital projects. As I'll talk about later, we do put 5 cents of our levy in capital projects, and we don't receive most of that money until we get closer to November and December and January. So you'll see that start to ramp up around then. Moving over to the restricted side, there's not much that's unexpected on the restriction side of revenues at this point. Nutrition services is running a little bit ahead of where it was last year. Activity in LSEF is running very close to where they were last year in terms of revenue. I will say before and after school services, that revenue does look a lot lower than it did a year ago. But if you'll also notice down below, the expenditures also are much, much lower than a year ago. There's a lot of factors there, partly the fact that we have less staff now that we are asking for reimbursement from the Y. So those are going to differ this year, but that overall fund is still running well because our revenue is outpacing our expenditures as we would have expected. Any questions on the revenue side of the report?
And one question, I think you probably would have mentioned it if it had occurred, is do we still have outstanding money that was delayed from the end of the last fiscal year that came in this period?
We do not. We still have a little over $1 million that is delayed. That is all in IDEA Part B, and the FER, the final expenditure report, is due to the state by the end of this month, and we will get that into them. We typically wait for that one until our auditors come in and look at they usually test as one of their pieces of the audit, they test Part B. And they work through that process there, and they've done that, and they've given us some advice on certain things that they think we should do. What we'll do is update the ASBR, and once we update the ASBR with the state, we can submit our final expenditure report, which then we'll be able to realize those Part B funds at some point. I would say either in October or November.
Okay, thanks. And I think no, that was my only question on the revenue. Thanks.
Okay. Moving on to the expense side, good news. We are doing well on the expense side in terms of comparison to last year. Relatively the same, but expenses are down just a little bit, just about 0.2%. That is a good thing. It means that we are budgeting closely to what we anticipate spending, close to what we budgeted in both Fund 1 and Fund 2. Debt service fund, that is a relatively large number because we had a debt service payment in September that we sent out in August. So that went out in August, late August, and then they received that in September. On the bond side, we are spending bond funds. That is a good thing. We are on schedule at this point with our bond expenses. Almost $4.5 million at this point. That number throughout the school year on the expense side should increase significantly as we start to get deeper and deeper into our projects, beginning more likely close to the beginning of the 2026 calendar year. Capital projects, that number, 1.8 million, typically this time of year is a little bit higher. Last year, we did spend, and we planned for this, we spent a lot of money in capital projects in the summertime. That's why those numbers are so very different from year to year. We do have $10.5 million budgeted and planned to spend this year. It just may vary about when we do that throughout the school year. And then on the restricted side, again, nutrition services running really close to where their revenue is this time of year, which is a good thing. Activity and LSCF usually run very, very close. That they're supposed to run basically even at a break-even point. And then, as I mentioned, before and after school services, that revenue is, those expenses are down, but that is okay. They are still outpacing, revenues outpacing those expenditures at this point. Any questions on the overall expenses?
I've got a question. It's not directly related to what you just talked about, but it's kind of related. The Thursday when we have our full board meeting, we're going to approve a list of Kelly services and stipends and things like that, and those pay changes, and I think there's at least one pay increase. Do those come from Fund 1 or Fund 2? Because I know it's not teacher pay.
So those would typically come from Fund 2 because those are, well, it depends. So let's use the one you were talking about. So Kelly Services, I believe, and I don't, this isn't my item, but I think Kelly Services is the only number on that document being changed.
Okay.
And so those would all be pay for teachers subbing on their plan period, I believe, and
Mhm.
that would impact Fund 2.
Okay.
Yeah, so those would be paid to teachers. So that would come
Okay.
out.
Okay, so we won't see the impact of that change in Fund 2 for probably another month or two, right?
Yes, and
Mhm.
to be quite honest, that you may not even see that impact too much. It's a relatively low
Mhm.
percentage of overall Fund
True.
2. But yes, you
Yeah,
would not
true.
see that for several months.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, to close out the revenue and expense report, let's talk about the fund balances at the bottom. We'll start with the restricted funds, bottom right. Um, I don't see any surprises in the fund balances on the restricted side. Obviously, nutrition services is well below where it was at this point last year, but we have discussed that previously. And so I don't think we need to discuss that right now. It's still relatively early. As we get more and more in the year, we'll be able to discuss that a little more and see where that fund balance is at. But it is lower than last year as expected. Activity in LSEF, relatively similar to last year, just a little bit ahead. But again, that will fluctuate throughout the year, and it's supposed to be about break even. And then before and after school services, I've highlighted this numerous times, and I'll do it again. I think it's great the work the district did previously. I wasn't in this role then. To truly turn that fund around from a negative fund balance a year ago to a fund balance that is positive and increasing slowly. We don't want that fund balance to increase significantly. That's not the purpose of it. But this does mean we are doing our job in that particular fund. All the folks that are responsible for that, and increasing that fund balance slightly each month. So very, very good there. And then on the far left, you'll notice that our overall fund balance, operating fund balance, is about 2% lower than it was a year ago, which is it's expected. We knew that we were at the end of last year going to be down about 2%, and we were. I will also note that you will continue to see that fund balance drop next month, and then at our low point likely in October. Well, before we start to realize some of our county funds that will, I'm sorry, our local funds that will come in at that point. That is expected. That fund balance is what we're using to get us through these months before we receive our local tax revenue. Any questions overall on any portion of the revenue and expense report?
No, thank you very much.
All right, moving on to the investment report. This will likely be my shortest investment report discussion so far, because as you'll notice, we don't have any investments that we're really moving right now. Nothing again until January. But I will say a couple things though, because I think this is a good time to say it. Fed did have a rate decrease last week. And so we did anticipate that. If you remember a month ago, we talked about that, the potential of that. And we did get out ahead of that, and we purchased a longer term investment ahead of that rate cut, which is a good benefit to our school district long term. Right now, at least through the month of August, the liquid rates are still stable above 4.22. I will say that there's a good likelihood next month I'll be talking about those liquid rates going down after the rate cut. So we'll talk about that next month if they do. But overall, in terms of our investment position, we are in a good place where we have good investments out 5 years out that are all hopefully going to outpace where those rates are as we see these rate drops that are coming. So any questions overall on the investment report?
Nope, no questions. Thanks.
All right. Last item is our balance sheet. Not a whole lot to note on the balance sheet, except if you'll notice in the P card payable column, there's a positive amount in that P card payable. It's a refund that we received. And so we'll likely let that sit for a little bit to see if it just sort of offsets itself by other payments that we're going to make, which it likely will. If it doesn't, then we'll certainly do a transfer later to move that out of there. But I did want to note that was a little bit of a difference. Bottom line, overall, our fund balances are where, as expected, I would say at this point. Each of those fund balances is where we anticipated them being at this time of year. So nothing is out of the ordinary, I don't think, on the bottom line of the balance sheet. Any questions?
Nope. I only had one question and you answered it. So no.
All right. Moving on to the last item that we have for today, which is our tax rate for this 2025-26 school year. On Thursday, we will have our tax rate hearing, and I'll do about a 10-minute presentation during that tax rate hearing and go over this in a lot more detail than I will today. But I do want to highlight, and thank you for pulling that up, the tax rate hearing notice, and just go over a few of the highlights here for you on this notice. So overall, our assessed value did go up. Went up a little over $168 million from last year to this year, which is a nice overall increase in our assessed value of almost 5% actually in the total assessed value. Now, there's some interesting pieces to that I want to talk about. So the first is you'll notice real estate went up, a decent amount. Personal property did drop, which is not uncommon. Personal property dropping is a relatively common thing. It has not been in some years previous to this, where the county has actually assessed personal property higher, or people have been buying things and it's been going up, but it did decrease this year. One of the biggest items on this document is the new construction and improvements. Of that $168 million increase that I mentioned, 119.8 million of that is in new construction. So the way that the state auditor's office and the school district set that tax rate ceiling, we do back out that new construction. You're allowed to keep all of that. So when you set your new tax rate, you don't factor that into the overall increase. So when you back out 119 million of the 168, our overall assessed value increase on the adjusted side is much lower, in the $40 million range actually. So that's why you actually see a slight overall tax rate increase this year, as opposed to a tax rate decrease, which you typically do see in a reassessment year when the overall assessed value goes up. But this is also normal if you have a lot of new construction, which we do. So we back out that new construction and then we set those rates down below, as you can see. For the purposes of the state, incidental, teacher, and capital are all the same. They're all operating. We don't place anything in Fund 2, in the teacher fund, but we do take 5 cents out of that overall operating number and put it into capital projects. And you'll see those broken out there for tax year, the 2025 tax year at the bottom. So our debt service levy, we leave that unchanged at 87 cents each year, but that is separate from the other three that I mentioned. That is a different calculation that you do to come up with that debt service levy. But overall, with those combined, that is a tax rate levy of 4.7391, which is about a 0.008 increase. So it's less than a cent increase overall. So the tax rate is for all intensive purposes is staying relatively the same, but just going up slightly based on the data that we have. And again, I will go into this in more detail on Thursday, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you have at this point.
I'm not sure if I have any specific questions. Every time you and Dr. Buck share this, I'm getting my brain around it a little bit more each time. But I've never been to a tax rate hearing. What types of comments do you get from the public in these hearings each year?
That's a great
Michelle,
question.
in the previous 5 years, we've had 0 comments.
Okay, gotcha.
So I would just reiterate by the way the formula works with Hancock, we're allowed to collect up to what inflation was the prior December, which was 2.9%. So we're supposed to increase our collection on existing only. That's why you take the new construction out of the formula. There's a Form A. We don't get to choose any numbers. We just plug and it spits it out. Then he sends it off to the state and they send it back the day of and say, yes, this is correct for your district. So because this increase is less than that 2.9% increase, that's why the rate goes up slightly. Had our existing property assessed valuation gone up greater than the CPI of last December of 2.9%, our tax rate would have gone down some. So that it's based on what our reality is versus what inflation was, because we're trying to keep up with inflation to be able to pay the bills forward.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Herzog. Moving on to section 4, future agenda items. This list has been before you in, the prior months. You'll see some items on here that should be coming fairly quickly, like the Blue Parkway realignment. This is an agreement that is part of a larger project that the city is doing, and we're partnering with the city on this project. There was an agreement signed, I'll say years ago, within the last 5 years, for this project. There's some licensing that we need to do with the city. And so that will come forward with the board at probably in October. Wearable devices, that's a pilot project right now, as you may be aware, at Woodland and at West, Lee Summit West. And as we go through the pilot this year, we'll be bringing forward a recommendation at some point as to what direction we'll go with the wearable devices. And so you can see the list here of items that'll come in the future months. So if there are ever any questions about these items, please let us know. We just want you to know, one, what's coming, look around the corner and see what's coming, but also that, these are the things that we're working on. And if there's ever any questions about these items, don't ever hesitate to ask.
Thanks.
All right. Board Member Dawson, are there any questions that you would like to ask before we end our meeting?
No, I think I'm all set on the agenda. But Dr. Chilton, do you have a minute or two afterwards to ask non-agenda questions about something else?
I do.
Okay. All right. Can I give you a call?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And thanks. I'm all set on the agenda, I think.
All right. Thank you. All right. That concludes our Finance Committee meeting for September 22nd, 2025. Have a